A very good evening. It's a brand new week. Thanks for joining us on The Big Story. I'm Haryanto Diman.
And I'm Olivia Quay. Subscribe to the Straits Times channel so you never miss a single episode. When the election ends, the hard work begins. What a weekend for Singapore politics. The People's Action Party back in government, winning 83 out of 93 seats in Parliament and 61.24% of the popular vote, but with a reduced vote share. Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong said it's not as strong a mandate he hoped for, but it's a good mandate.
On the opposition side, the Workers' Party captured 10 seats from 3 constituencies, Aljunied, Hougang and, in a surprise upset, the new Sengkang GRC. Party Chief Pritam Singh said that the result was a pleasant surprise and he pledged to do his best in the newly created post as the leader of the opposition. To dissect the big GE2020 weekend, we're joined once more by news editor Zakir Hussain. Hello Zakir. From 2015 to 2020, PAP's share of the popular vote dropped 8.7 percentage points. Their vote share in almost all constituencies declined as well. Can you break down the main reasons behind this?
Hi, Haryanto. I think one of the main reasons is actually 2015 election was a bit of an anomaly. It was, the PAP and support for the PAP was on a high on the back of the SG50 celebrations, and I think the passing of Mr. Lee Kuan Yew earlier that year helped contribute to the swing in support for the PAP. But if we take out 2015 and we look back to say 2006, 2011 and 2020, I think the election results are a return to this old normal perhaps, where roughly the PAP support is likely to hover around 60 to 65% of the popular vote. I think there were several reasons for this slide as well. I think one was the decision by the government to call an election in the middle of a pandemic caused a bit of unhappiness. There were also, maybe it didn't contribute so much, but I think the situation at polling stations that morning, long queues and so on, might have cost some voters who hadn't yet decided, to vote against the PAP. Also, I think the opposition did drive home, we thought, a clear message that, the PAP can remain in government, but we want to be a check and balance. And they also raised concerns over a possible wipeout. And I think, enough voters, especially young voters, felt a need to vote for the opposition, and I think that contributed to the Workers' Party taking Sengkang GRC.
Oh, well said, Zak. Okay, so Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong said on Friday night in PAP's press conference that Workers' Party Chief Pritam Singh will be appointed to the newly created position of Leader of the Opposition. What are the pros and cons of this new post?
I think, one clear pro is it's a clear recognition, and especially for the close to 40% of voters who didn't vote for the PAP, that the opposition has a permanent place in Singapore politics. In fact, the WP raised its winning margin in Aljunied GRC and Hougang, and with Sengkang GRC, that's two town councils that the WP will be running now. Also, the post of leader of the opposition, although the details are not out yet, it does suggest that he will get an office, with secretarial staff support. And in a number of countries with similar parliamentary systems, the leader of the opposition also has to, form, say, a shadow cabinet that will study policies in various areas and spar with the ruling party. But this is also where I think the con could come in, because then the WP is forced to almost say come up with its own policies on various areas from finance to education. Just to cite an example, the WP has opposed the GST hike that it will take place in this term of government, although it will come with generous offsets so that the low income aren't worse off. Now, as leader of the opposition, and I think the WP will be challenged to, for instance, present how it proposes to fund, say, additional spending on healthcare and, say, education as well.
Now, Progress Singapore Party will announce tomorrow who in its West Coast team will take up the 2 non-constituency MP positions. Who do you think it'll be?
Well, this is, I think, the million-dollar question. PSP founder Dr. Tan Cheng Bock has said he will not take up the post and let his younger members of the team take it. So I think speculation has been that Dr. Tan's number 2, Mr. Leong Man Wai, will take up the post, and also a key member of the West Coast team, Ms. Hazel Phua, this is actually her 3rd election.
Right.
So, but it remains to be seen. I mean, it depends. The party is expected to meet, later today and tomorrow. And if, say, the committee feels Dr. Tan should take the post, we can't rule that out entirely.
Right. Okay, we'll find out tomorrow then. Moving on, the ELD Gazette came out about an hour ago, meaning the winning candidates are officially members of parliament. What happens next, Zakir? When will they be sworn in? Are we going to see a cabinet reshuffle anytime soon as well?
Well, actually, I think the first order of business is many of the newly elected MPs will this week start meeting residents. Not in person because of the safe distancing requirements, but they'll do so online, and many of them have sent out leaflets and notices and posted on Facebook telling residents that if they need help with queries or assistance, they can reach out to them. Now, these Meet the People sessions take place every week, and I think the most direct contact people have with constituents. And I think after the 2-3 week break for the elections, this week they'll probably see a lot of queries. Next on the agenda is, I think, the formation of a new cabinet. Traditionally, it's taken place within a week or two, so I think that we can expect very soon. I think MPs. After that, Parliament will reopen, and the new ministers will work on the agenda for the next term of government. I think the reopening of Parliament might take place perhaps sometime in August.
Well, still many things to look out for then. So thanks very much, Zak. It's been a pleasure to chat with you throughout this election period. We've been speaking to news editor at the Straits Times, Zakir Hussain.
On to the latest COVID-19 situation here. There are 322 new cases confirmed today. The Health Ministry attributed this to fewer tests being conducted by the COVID-19 testing laboratories over the public holiday and weekend on July 10th and 11th, with the backlog of samples being cleared from Sunday.
Today's community cases comprise 2 Singaporeans or permanent residents and 9 work pass holders. There are also 5 imported cases, and more details will be announced later tonight. Let's talk about this further with infectious diseases specialist Dr Leong Hoe Nam from the Rophi Clinic at Mount Elizabeth Novena. Long time no see, Dr Leong, it's good to have you back. Now, the number of community infections each day has varied. 11 cases today, just 1 reported on Sunday, but 24 on Saturday. What trends can we read into this, though?
I think we're seeing rising numbers of cases throughout the period. And after the last couple of weeks with GE, my fear is that whether did anyone spread any infections during the queues. I sincerely hope that none of that happened, and I hope that everyone remember to maintain their safe distancing. Going forward, I do expect more and more cases. We see many people going out as if there's no tomorrow. People tend to forget their safe distancing. People seem to forget that wearing the mask includes covering of the nose. Indeed, you can spot at least 10% of the people who are traveling who are not covering their mask well. All these doesn't bode good news for Singapore. We're going to see more and more cases, and already we see the rise in community cases. Surprisingly, the Singapore and permanent resident numbers remain low. I think that's a good sign. We all need to just dig in and just maintain it and hunker along. We can do this. We will accept a small number of transmissions as long as it doesn't mess up the whole economy.
Doctor, I just want to touch on the part where you talk about election. Now, as much as possible, we saw that candidates, supporters and the media tried to abide by safe distancing measures. But of course, in the frenzy of nomination day and polling day, there were some breaches. Do you think we'll see repercussions in the next 1 or 2 weeks?
That's a very good question. we may see some repercussions. And if you look at some of the celebratory videos that circulated around, there were many people who were not wearing masks appropriately and they were not practicing safe distancing. The government warned about this, we anticipated it, and surely at the top of every infectious disease physician's mind was, will there be another outbreak thereafter? Now, one peculiar thing is not all people with COVID-19 will spread infection. Some interesting data points which you may want to look at. 80% of the people spread the virus very poorly, or if not, don't even transmit. But 20% of the cases spread the virus very well and effectively. In fact, you can actually have a super spreading event. So in order for a outbreak of numbers, you not only need someone who's a super spreader, you also need the right place at the right time. So certainly if there was a crowd of people where people are not wearing masks or doing things inappropriately and the super spreading person lands at the right spot at the right time, you could end up a super spreading event. Case in point, South Korea, on the very first weekend when it opened up after their first lockdown, 119 cases transmitted by one such individual. The right individual at the right place at the right time, you can have all your efforts upended just like that. So Singaporeans, everyone just have to work together. We try to prevent the super spreading event and we will keep our numbers down.
Right. Well, Dr. Leong, let's move on from COVID-19 to dengue, which has continued to flare up with about 250 cases reported each week. Last week was the 5th week in a row that case numbers exceeded 1,000. Do you think this is because there are indeed more infections, or is it more likely due to people being more proactive about seeking treatment as a result of COVID-19?
I think there are a lot more cases. Now, of the 100 cases there are with dengue fever, 70% are asymptomatic, which means you may acquire the infection and you may not know about this and you do not bother seeing a doctor. But the rest of the 30% can be rather symptomatic. In the patients which we are seeing in the hospital, at the clinics, we are seeing a lot of symptomatic individuals with fever. In fact, if you have a fever now, there's a 90% chance based on the hospital statistics, is going to be dengue fever. Now, the individuals who have dengue fever, they get a lot of fever, headache, muscle aches. They are truly quite symptomatic. How then is there a rise in numbers? I think it boils down to the fact that many people are working from homes. There's a lot of transmission in the household, and you must remember that the mosquito is actually a buffet mosquito. It doesn't stop with 1 feet, 2 feet, 3 feet. In fact, it goes on for 7 to 8 feet before it stops. So you can imagine everyone gathering around for lunch or dinner in one whole family. The mosquito comes in. As the people feed on the dishes, the mosquito will be feeding on the 7 to 8 people around at the dining table. So it's feeding frenzy for all. Unfortunately, staying at home means that a lot of us are getting infected at home as well.
Right. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Leong. As always, it's a pleasure to speak with you. We've been speaking to Dr. Leong Hoe Nam, an infectious diseases specialist at the Rophi Clinic. In other local headlines, new rules are kicking in from next month. Cyclists and PMD users will be banned from holding and using their mobile phones while riding, while those under 16 years old are not allowed to ride an e-scooter without adult supervision. First-time offenders may face a fine of up to $1,000 or up to 3 months in jail. The changes are part of the Active Mobility Act to improve safety on the use of devices.
A general practitioner has been suspended for 22 months for not providing 6 patients with appropriate care, including not referring them to a specialist in a timely manner. Dr. Tan Jung Piang had prescribed thousands of sleeping pills or hypnotics to them for more than a decade. He also didn't keep sufficient details of their conditions and treatment in his records. The disciplinary tribunal said its decision was based on several factors, including the patient's advanced ages, with the youngest aged 57 and the oldest aged 81 at the time of the last prescription.
Meanwhile, across the Causeway, Malaysian Prime Minister Muhyiddin Yassin today secured his first win since being sworn in on March 1st. His government successfully replaced the Speaker of Parliament by a vote of 111 to 109 after a heated debate.
It shows that Mr. Muhyiddin has the numbers in Parliament to govern, but only just. Joining us now is Malaysia Bureau Chief Shannon Teoh in Kuala Lumpur. So, Shannon, months of uncertainty and debate over Mr. Muhyiddin's parliamentary majority finally ended today. Did the outcome of the voting surprise you in any way?
Well, not really. I think having postponed a parliamentary vote twice now, the fact that Muhyiddin was happy to go to parliament to get a vote done kind of indicated that he was confident of winning, even if it was by a very slim majority. So no real surprise at the result, but it does tell us what we know, what we believe, that his majority is very slim.
Now, even though Mr. Muhyiddin has successfully ousted the Speaker and a proven majority in Parliament, it was a razor-thin win of only 2 votes. It does not prove a strong and clear mandate for his Parliament. What does this mean moving forward for him?
Well, I think having started this parliamentary session, they've got to see it through, and it's going to last 25 days in total. It'll take us all the way up to the end of August, and there are several other motions, other bills, such as a stimulus package and things like that. They've got to approve that. But it actually lays bare how difficult it's going to be. Today it was 111 to 109 because one minister was absent because of ill health. And you can see how in the future, what if 3 ministers or 3 MPs from the government were ill? What if someone was incapacitated for any particular reason? They risk losing a vote in that kind of situation. So it's not really tenable to move forward that way. You can imagine a lot of cabinet ministers will be camped around Parliament throughout the entire session, right? Instead of doing their administrative duties, which has always been the way in the past, cabinet ministers would have some leeway to rotate. In a sense, they would be able to go to their offices to get some work, go down to the ground across Malaysia to get work done while Parliament was sitting. They don't have that luxury now. So it's going to be very difficult to function at optimum level for this government. So we are going to see how, this just really pushes the need for a firmer mandate for Muhyiddin or any Prime Minister.
Right. Would we still see a snap election happening then? If so, Shannon, when do you think it would most likely be?
Of course, if Muhyiddin had lost the vote today, then likely he would have had to go to the King to dissolve Parliament. But now it looks like he does have a majority and it's up to him. But as we just discussed, it's going to be very difficult to govern moving into the future. There's a budget that has to be tabled in November as well. Now, the question is whether he wants to go and look for a fresh mandate before the budget or after the budget. That's kind of the timeline people are talking about, whether we do it at the end of this year or early next year. Now, his partners in government, UMNO and PAS, they're wanting to go to the polls as soon as possible. And they've signaled very clearly to Muhyiddin, we support you for now. Right now, because it seems that he is quite popular, Malaysians seem to indicate that they approve the government's handling of the coronavirus pandemic. So he's kind of in the clear for now, which is what UMNO is saying. But as time passes, this could change. And I think for Muhyiddin, he has to strike while the iron is hot. For him, he's quite popular now. The opposition is not really gotten his act together. And, the economy hasn't really tanked yet. He might want to try and improve the economy, but there's always a risk. The longer you wait, things can happen. And then you wonder whether you will have enough left in the tank for new stimulus packages and things like that. So most observers are looking at final quarter or of this year or first quarter of next year. And, government sources also tell me that's really what Muhyiddin has been indicating to his party as well.
Right. Now, Shannon, on the note of opposition, with Mr. Muhyiddin's win today, how does former PM Mahathir Mohamad or even Anwar Ibrahim, who was previously poised to take over, fit in the picture now? And who would most likely be fielded as the opposition's candidate for the premiership position?
Well, the dispute between the two key opposition leaders have continued all the way up to now. They are both insisting that they should be made prime minister if they regain power, Of course, Mahathir has in past few weeks said that, well, okay, as a compromise, I don't mind Shafi'i Abdal, that's the Sabah Chief Minister, as someone who could possibly take up the mantle. The concern on Mahathir's camp is that Anwar doesn't really have the support amongst the Malay majority. And that's going to be crucial if you want to win, whether it's at an election or even to govern with a firm mandate in terms of the number of MPs you have. Anwar, of course, feels differently. He feels that I'm leading Pakatan Harapan. I have 91 MPs. Mahathir's camp is only 17 or 18 MPs. Why should I give in to him? So this is going to be an ongoing and evolving situation, I think, as we get to the elections. There is a risk that the opposition might have overlapping claims on seats. They might not have an electoral pact as they go into election, and that will play into Muhyiddin's favor. Right now, the last update that we have from them is that just before Parliament came to session, the two different sides kind of backed away from an open dispute and say, well, let's just go into Parliament, make sure that we have a solid bloc to try and frustrate Muhyiddin's efforts to change the speaker to win any votes. On the issue of the Prime Ministership, well, they've kicked that can down the road, but I'm not sure if they can eventually resolve.
Right. Well, plenty of food for thought from our Malaysia Bureau Chief, Shannon Teoh. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Let's now check in with Dylan Ang for what's making headlines around the world.
Thanks and good evening, guys. The man who killed 51 Muslim worshippers in New Zealand's worst mass shooting has decided to represent himself a month ahead of the sentencing hearing. Australian Brenton Tarrant pleaded guilty earlier this year to 51 charges of murder, 40 charges of attempted murder, and 1 charge of committing a terrorist act. Tarrant has been in police custody since the attack in March last year. His sentencing hearing is set to begin on August 24th. A French medical expert has warned that there is little chance of a 100% effective coronavirus vaccine by 2021 and urged people to take social distancing measures more seriously. Citing that a vaccine often takes several years to develop, he said that he will be very surprised if it will be developed quicker than that, stressing the need for the public to live with the virus. Across the Atlantic, reports have emerged of a 30-year-old man in Texas who died after attending a COVID-19 party hosted by an infected person. According to the chief medical officer at the Methodist Hospital in San Antonio, the man had thought the virus was a hoax, despite it killing more than 135,000 people in the United States so far. Football icon David Beckham is set to become a father-in-law after his son Brooklyn announced his engagement to actress Nicola Peltz. The couple, who reportedly started dating in late 2019, took to Instagram to share the news. 21-year-old Brooklyn is the eldest son of David and Victoria Beckham, who sent congratulations on the platform, saying that they could not be happier with the announcement. That is all that's what's making headlines around the world. It's back to you guys in the studio.
Thanks, Dylan. And news out of the footballing world, Manchester City fans can rejoice because the club will play in the Champions League next season after its 2-year ban from the competition was overturned by the Court of Arbitration for Sport. Man City successfully appealed against the alleged breaches of UEFA's financial fair play rules and also had its fine reduced from 30 million euros to 10 million.
To inspire and uplift readers in this new COVID-19 reality, the Straits Times commissioned 30 works by local writers and artists. This was done with the support of the National Arts Council as part of the SG Culture Anywhere campaign.
Today we feature Sriwana, one of the oldest performing arts groups in Singapore, who have come up with a new piece titled Lens. We'll give you a sneak peek, and earlier, Haryanto also caught up with Sriwana's president and artistic director.
Sriwana's Lens is the performing arts group's first attempt in presenting its work through a digital form to reflect what was experienced during the circuit breaker period. We are pleased to be joined by President and Artistic Director Fauzia Hanum Yusof to tell us more. Hi Fauzia, nice to meet you.
Hello.
Welcome. For a start, could you tell us more about how both Sriwana and Lens came about?
Okay, because I think this is a commissioned work done by Straits Times and the National Arts Council. So when we are being approached, I think the first thing that we wanted to showcase is about what the effects of the pandemic are to the individual and to the society.
And what was one of the biggest challenge that you faced during this whole putting up of the performance?
Yeah, because it was during the CB period. So as you are aware that there's no way we can go leave the house and there's no form of meetups. So the biggest challenge is to gather our dance talents to be in one space so that they are able to perform, to practice within the normal live theater space. So it's a different perspective altogether. So that's the biggest challenge. How do we go about to meet? I mean, how do we meet and bring out these dance pieces in within the circuit breaker requiments?
Now, what is the message that you hope to put across to the audience through your performance lens?
Okay, I think for all the arts activists outside, I think we are aware what the pandemic effects are on us. So each and every one of us try to reach out to the public as best as we can. So our hope is more of, besides trying to reconnect to the public, as in they are all within the confined spaces. So we are trying to, I mean, you know, arts give them a different feel of together. Maksudnya, to give them another avenue to de-stress. So our hope is to educate juga in presenting whatever the three lens that we project, and at the same time sometimes you're not aware that the problems exist. So with this dance pieces, we hope they are able to embrace the problems that we are issuing, and at the same time we are hoping that we can be strong together as we reconnect, and a hope to unite and embrace each other so that we can come out stronger.
Well, thank you very much for taking time to speak with us. We've been speaking to Fauzia Hanum Yusof, President and Artistic Director of Performing Arts Group, Sriwana. Visit this Straits Times website to see the other works in the 30 Days of Art with NEC series. That is all we have for you today. For more news and videos, visit straitstimes.com and remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel by hitting the red button below. Once again, I'm Harvianto Diman with Olivia Quay. Join us tomorrow for more stories on The Big Story.